Hello, this is Dr. Frost, and I'm going to show you some of the online functionality behind the DrFrostMaths.com platform. And this video is intended for teachers rather than students. And I'm only going to show you some of the functionality just to show you some of the kind of functionality that is available. Now this is the dashboard. So if you've already registered and logged in, this is what you'll initially see, and you can see there's a bunch of notifications related to what your students have been doing. Now notice I've scrambled the names, by the way, but usually you can click on these notifications and that takes you to the relevant part of the platform. So if I click this, it gives me an overview of all the work that particular class a student has been in. But we'll explore this later. So if I go back to this dashboard, you can see a summary of your school performance. So I can see my school's watched 516 hours of videos on my site. They've got this number of topic medals, I'll explain that later. They've answered 1.3 million questions, etc. And there's a bunch of kind of easy, quick links to the main parts of the site here. Notice also these tabs. If I click on guides here, it tells you your setup progress, so these are all ticks for me because I've set everything up. There's various stuff you might want to try. There's a kind of introductory PowerPoint if you want to introduce this to your department. And there's various practical ways in which you might use this platform within the scope of what you do as a department. But one particularly cool thing is if I click on training, it gives me these kind of interactive modules. So if I was to click on explore the dashboard and start that, it then gives you a step-by-step guide behind using that particular part of the platform. And you have those for most of the parts of the site's functionality. You can also see a summary of your class performance. So I can see the activity over the past month, and I can see that 7RG, for example, have done the most work on the site, and obviously I can select different time spans or different year groups here. So the dashboard is really useful to get a summary of the latest information about what's going on with your students. Now if I go to questions, this menu is to do with kind of using questions or exploring questions or compiling questions. So if I go to browse questions by topic, that allows you to browse the entire database of questions where you can filter by topic or difficulty or by exam board. So I can filter here by Edexcel, for example, and you can see there's 13,000 Edexcel questions. I can either filter by text if I want to find a particular word or phrase, and I can filter by difficulty and topics. If I click the topic, you can see I've got Key Stage 2, 3, 4 here, Key Stage 5, and you can even quickly get the things in your scheme of work here. So if I was to select algebra, for example, then expanding brackets, and then expand a single bracket, I've got 88 questions here by Edexcel, so I could click this question, for example, which was on a foundation paper, expand and simplify, and then as a teacher, if you were to give this question to your class and they were to give you an answer, you can then input it here. So you can see this algebraic keyboard that comes up, and I can put in answer. I'm not going to answer it properly, but I can use this keyboard, and that's going to be wrong, but you can see it instantly gives me feedback about what the right answer is, and it even shows you the mark scheme for that particular question if it's an exam question. Next, under the questions menu, I'm going to go to past papers, and we can see there's past papers by a variety of different main exam boards. You've also got the SATs papers here for Key Stage 2 and 3. We've got primary maths challenge papers here, all the maths challenge and Olympiad papers here, and even MAT papers as well. But let's say go to Edexcel, because I've got most of those papers on here. And you can see there's lots of different subfolders. Let's say go to the new foundation GCSE, which is here. Click that. And then we've got a variety of the newer papers here. So let's just click one paper, and you can see it's showing me that particular paper, and I can answer these questions in the same way as I did on the browse questions facility. But there's a variety of options here. I can save my own copy, allowing me to modify that paper, and I'll show you how to construct your own papers later and compilations of questions. I can export it to Word, and I'll show you that later. You can sort of practice it, and students have this option when they view a paper, allowing them to practice it question by question and get feedback question by question. Or I can set it to students. If I click this, I can say who I want to select the task for. So I can select a number of classes. Let's say I want all the students in this particular class. I can select multiple classes if I want. Click OK. It's actually showing me all the recent homeworks I've set for the particular class. I can select when it's due, even the time of day you want it to be due for. Warn when wrong. If this is set to yes, then students have a second opportunity to answer the question if their initial answer is wrong, unless it's a multiple choice question. You can allow them to reattempt the homework at the end, and they only have to re-answer the questions that they've got wrong so they can correct those questions. You can set a time limit if you wish, but its defaults to none. You can say whether to set it immediately or schedule it for later time, so students don't try and do the homework too early. And the accuracy measure, if you're setting a past paper where all the questions in your homework have some kind of mark attached to them, you can either say each question is worth basically 1 point, or if I select the other option, use exam marking, it actually uses the marks associated with each question to give you a more accurate accuracy measure. Now these two options here, if you set it as a homework, then students get instant feedback after each question, and they can review their answers after they've done their homework. If you set it as an assessment, then students don't get feedback after each question. It just says your answer has been registered. They have the opportunity to modify their answers before they finally submit their homework at the end. And only until the due date will they be able to actually see the answers. So this is useful if you want to set a more formal type of assessment. But I'm not going to set that now. Now let's go to setting homework. So if you go to set work here and then set homework, you can see there's two options here. There's automated homeworks and then there's fixed question homeworks. So with automated homeworks, you set some filters, so like the topics you want involved in the homework and the difficulty range, maybe other filters like the exam board you want to use. And then it picks the questions most appropriate to the students. So let's say, for example, you're setting a homework on expanding brackets. And let's say a particular student has done some questions on expanding brackets before, and they've managed to get their skill level on that particular skill of expanding brackets up to, say, level 3. That means that when they do the homework, they'll get harder questions because they'll be more appropriate for themselves. If they start to get questions wrong, then they'll go down a level and get easier questions. If they keep them getting them right, they'll go up a level and they'll get harder questions, all confined within the difficulty range that you set, which I'll show you in a second. Fixed question homeworks, which I'll show you in a second, allows you to choose specific questions that ensures that all students get the same questions. So this might be a past paper like the ones we've seen, or it could be your own compilation of questions that you've made yourself. So if I click automated homework, you can see I can select the topic. So let's say I want to set a homework on expanding brackets, expand a single bracket. I can set the difficulty level. So auto, as I was explaining, means it will set the difficulty level appropriate to the student, but within this particular range. So let me just quickly explain what these difficulty levels mean if you click on this link here. So one are sort of starter questions, the most basic possible questions, often multiple choice. Two are sort of like your typical questions, or 3 are hard exam style questions. So for example, if it was a GCSE higher tier paper, the first third, the first half of the paper might be level 2, and the latter half of the paper might be level 3. And then killer questions are intended to be beyond the normal expectations of what students be expected to do in exam. We can filter to any author as well, so to AQA or OCR, etc. And then completion criteria. So I can say I want students to achieve a certain accuracy, so they have to get, for example, 4 out of the last 5 questions right at any difficulty. I can obviously change those settings. Or I can say a fixed number of questions. So let's say 10 questions here, and I need to set it to a particular class. So let's set it to this random class here. I'm not going to set a due date, and then I'm going to set task. Now notice it warns you about what skills these questions might combine with. And that's because questions in this database on DrFrostMaths can be assigned multiple different skills. So these questions on expanding a single bracket in my database can combine, for example, with expanding 2 more brackets. So this question involves expansion of a single bracket, but also double brackets as well. There might be questions where you have to expand brackets involved in drawing a line using its equation, etc. All these skills. Now, if you set up a scheme of work, this list will be reduced because you can state what skills students are expected to know. But I'm not going to select any of these, and I'm just going to say set task, and that will bring me to this view here, this progress interface, where I can see how students have progressed with this particular task. Now let's explore this progress interface in more detail. If you go to progress and just go to one of these, you'll go to any parts of the progress interface. So let's go to activity log, this tab here, and I can see all the activity students been doing. So it tells me, for example, this was a homework someone was doing. But I can also see this student has done an independent practice as well. So if I click this, for example, I can see all the questions the student's done. I can quickly go to what questions they've got wrong, what the correct answer was, what their answer was. You can click this button here to see the full mark scheme, etc. You can even export the students' answers to Word. If I go to by class, I can then select a particular class and I can see all the homeworks that they've done. And if I was to click on one of these, I can see again what the students' answers were in a similar way that we saw before. So I return to this. And by the way, if it says multiple, that means the student has done the homework multiple times. So they got these questions wrong. And then if you click on the second attempt, you can see that they've re-attempted those questions that they got wrong on the first attempt. You can make the student redo if you wish, or you can unassign the homework if they haven't yet done it. Now what's quite nice is the analysis button. So if you click this analysis button here, it gives you analysis question by question of the homework, so I can see the students' answers to every single question. So I can see here what answer they put to this multiple choice question. And this is great, this feature. If you click by topic here, it shows me all the skills involved in that particular homework, in this case, in this Junior Maths Challenge paper, and it says the accuracy across that class for that particular skill. You can also export their worst questions to Microsoft Word, and it will audit by how well they were answered, or how badly they were answered, I should say. You can also see progress by topic. So I've still the same class. If I go to, say, algebra, I can see all the different topics involved in algebra. So you can see these individual skills like curved graphs, and because they're in year 8, they won't have seen any of these skills, but they have done plenty on expanding brackets, and I can see all the questions the students have done on that particular skill. You can see different leaderboards, so school this year, or different year groups, etc. You can see what videos students have watched. You can generate reports. So for example, progress by topic and various different settings here, and it will export that to Microsoft Excel. And you can also view what feedback students have written. So whenever students answer a question and they've inputted an answer, they can optionally write feedback about that question, which the teacher will see. And you can see this little icon here tells you how many new pieces of feedback that you have. Now let's create our own compilation of questions. So if we go back to questions and worksheet builder, you can then choose your own questions, so I can click plus to add extra questions. And to choose a question, I just click the box, and that allows me to explore the database of questions in the usual way. So let's just say I want to pick, say, a Pythagoras question, go down to Pythagoras, solve 2D problems involving Pythagoras theorem, and let's just filter to, say, OCR questions. So let's click this, say, question here from a foundation paper, use this question, it's now got that there. Let's pick just a few more questions so I can export this. And notice it remembers your filter settings when you go to pick the next question. Now if I was to save this, so let's just save this as Pythagoras test. And you can change the visibility settings, which I won't go into now. So it's now saved that, and it shows the directory structure here. Now if I want to export it to Word, you just click this button. And you've got these options here, but I'm just going to click Generate. And now I can see it's exported this to Word. And if I open this, you can see it here, Pythagoras test, the number of marks. It's got the questions here. And then if you scroll to the bottom, you can see that it's also generated the mark scheme automatically for me as well. So it's an extremely powerful facility, this. And remember, it has questions from multiple different exam boards amongst other authors, such as myself as well. But as I was saying before, you could also set your compilation of questions to a particular class. Or if I wanted to go to past papers, and I go to, say, Edexcel again, and I take this A-level paper, and I was to save as, and I save my own copy, that will allow me to edit the questions in that paper now. So if I go to edit mode, I can then remove questions from this paper. I can drag questions around to reorder them, and so on. And then I can save that so I can then set it to my own students. Now hopefully you're amazed by the functionality you've seen already, and you might think, well, I want to set this up for my particular class. So if you go to this settings icon here and go to manage classes, we can then see all the classes here. Now there is a facility to do a bulk import using Excel spreadsheet if you're setting up for the start of the year. So I do that at the end of August, the beginning of September. So if I show you that, start the wizard, then it gives you this spreadsheet file to download. If I just open that, you can see that you just put in here their surname, first name, class, and optionally their email address and their year group as well. And then it will prompt you about those particular students. And it will try to match them if they already exist in the database. So it'll give you the option to add that student to a particular class or create a fresh student if they just happen to have the same name as another student in your school, etc. But if I go back to manage classes again, I can also create a class using this interface here. So let's create a test class. So we've got test here, and I'll select a year group, and this will be set up for your particular school. Let's assign myself to this particular class, and I'll go into detail about schemes of work later. I'll leave that blank for the moment. And we can see I've now created that class, and it gives you 3 options for adding students to this particular class. You can either let students create this account from scratch and you just give them this link, or you can put in the names of students, and I'll show you that in a second, and then it will still give you the link and they'll get to choose their name from a drop-down, or you can put in all the details yourself, like their email address and their name, and then it will have the account fully created for them, and it will automatically email them to tell them how to log in. They will still have to set a password. But if I go to add students here, now you just put surname, then a comma, then their first name, and then optionally you can put in their email address, and it explains it all in this text here. If I do continue, then you can see it's warned me there's actually already someone called Joe Bloggs in year 7, and then gives me some options about what to do. Dave McBloke, however, doesn't exist, so I can just create an account for them. And Hannah Smith, that's just an anomaly. Someone's already added this particular example email address to their own school, so I'm not able to add them to my school. So let's ignore that. But if we then go to a particular class that I've already set up, you can see the students here. I can click them and I can move their class, I can edit their details, change their password. You can forcibly activate their account if they haven't, for some reason, got the activation email. You can archive them, which sort of hides the student if they've left the school, but their account still exists. And you can still select multiple students as well. And you can add further students if you wish. Notice you can change the assigned teachers and schemes of work here and other details, and it gives you this link to give to your students if they want to join that particular class. Now, one particularly nice feature is this Use Class Demo Account button. So if I click that, it then shows you what a student would see if they were logged on themselves in that class. So you can see Dr. Selig has set this homework to this class, and if I click it, this is what a student would see. And what's quite nice is it detects all the skills involved in this particular set of questions that I set to that class for that homework, and they can then watch the videos. If I click that, they can watch a video of me explaining that particular skill. And then they would start this. So just to demonstrate how this system works, I've selected here we want to find factors or multiples of a number as a homework, and the students got this question. They're starting on difficulty level 2 because that's the level they previously achieved on this topic. And we've got this question here. From this list, select a number which has 3 and 5 as factors. The answer is 45. So they would select 45. They submit their answer, and then it says they got it right, and you can see I've actually got a few extra points. So they have points associated with each particular skill, and they also get some bonus practice points just for ongoing practice, even if they've maxed out their points in that particular skill. And if they get to a sufficient number of points, their level for that particular skill will go up. Similarly, if they get questions wrong on this topic, their level will go down, and they'll get gradually easier questions on that particular topic. And you can see also that they can leave feedback for the teacher, and it also comes up with a mark scheme, which for this question is not particularly exciting. And you can see it detects what skills are in that particular question, in this case just one particular skill, and if they were to click that, they would be able to watch a video about that topic. Now the last thing to show you is about schemes of work. So if I go to settings and then manage schemes of work, I can see the schemes of work that I set up for my particular school. So this is the year 7 scheme of work. If I wanted to create a new one, if I just go to Test, Scheme of Work, and then I select a particular year group, let's say it's for year 13, and then I can select the start date for my academic year. Now, the whole point of a scheme of work is that A, allows students to see what skills they're supposed to be working on. So, for example, if you go to questions practice by topic, and students would have this available, can you see in the middle, they're allowed to select skills from their scheme of work. So if I go to year 7 and autumn 1, I can see all the skills in that particular term scheme of work. So that's one reason why you might want to set up a scheme of work. Another reason is that then it knows what skills students are expected to know. And that means, for example, when we set that homework and it said, oh, these questions on this particular skill you selected might combine with other skills, it won't say that if it knows the students in your class already know those particular things. So it builds up a sense of knowledge of what the student has. So prerequisite skills is what students are expected to know at the start of the year. I can import from another scheme of work if I wanted to. So let's just say they expect to know everything to do with spanning brackets. And make sure you save any changes here. And then we can add particular terms. So I can say when the term starts, so let's say September the 1st, and let's call that autumn 1. And you can see now the term here. I can change the name if I wish, and then I can select the skills. So I can then add other skills to that scheme of work. And you can see it appears here. And you can actually reorder them by just dragging them around. That's a new feature. And that will change the order they appear when students go to practice. That's the only thing it will affect. And obviously, I can add further terms. And that's about it for this demo. As I explained, if you go to the dashboard and you go to the training module, you can see step-by-step guidance about how to use each of the features on this site. And feel free to email me at jamie@drfrostmaths.com if you have any questions.